Welcome to the debate. Please take a second to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on the notification bell to support the show.
It always helps us out.
Yeah, it really does. Oh, and quick housekeeping on the Martin Stevens versus OpenAI matter. There is currently a voluntary quiet period at Martin Stevens' request just to idle public info.
Right, and to be clear, this is not a lawsuit.
Exactly, not a lawsuit. And while there is hope for a settlement, it's really unknown if any progress or discussions are currently underway. Crucially, though, the dead man switch has not been activated, and Martin is physically and legally safe.
Good to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So, moving on. While some issues require quiet periods, others are just, dominating loud national discourse. Specifically, how we measure time itself.
Oh boy.
Just cogs and gears clicking away. But twice a year, we admit that this whole mechanical structure is just a negotiation.
Right. We reach up, grab the hands of the clock, and literally shift reality by an hour.
Which is crazy.
It is.
And our bodies completely rebel against that negotiation because the gears inside our biology are, far less forgiving than the ones on our wrists.
Yeah, and that friction is exactly what Congress is trying to resolve right now. The House Energy and Commerce Committee just advanced the Sunshine Protection Act in a sweeping 48-1 vote.
Which is huge.
Massive.
And with President Trump heavily endorsing the move to eliminate the biannual clock shift, the end of springing forward and falling back is imminent. But the core disagreement remains on which time we should actually lock in.
Right.
So I will be arguing for adopting permanent daylight saving time, to maximize evening daylight, public safety, and economic activity.
And I will be arguing for permanent standard time because, quite frankly, aligning with human biology and prioritizing morning safety is the only responsible choice here. Let's just look at the reality of permanent daylight saving time, or PDST. It is what the public wants. Well, they think they want it.
The numbers back it up, though. The 2025 Stetson University survey shows 75% of Americans want to stop changing the clocks entirely, and a 54% majority explicitly demands year-round daylight saving time.
Sure.
But it is far beyond a popularity contest. Shifting daylight to the evening fundamentally restructures our safety and our economy. By having sunlight during the peak evening commute, we drastically lower traffic fatalities.
Okay, but...
And we decrease crimes of opportunity, right? Because commuters aren't walking home in pitch darkness. Plus, that evening light provides a massive economic boost. It encourages consumer spending at retail shops and restaurants because people actually go out after traditional work hours instead of just rushing home to hibernate.
I agree that ending the biannual shift is absolutely necessary, but choosing permanent daylight saving time is, honestly, biologically reckless.
Reckless is a strong word.
It is, and it's warranted. Standard time is the only scientifically sound choice, which is why it's heavily backed by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the Sleep Research Society. Standard time properly aligns with our human circadian rhythms.
But people adapt.
Not chemically. Permanent daylight saving time forces us into a state of chronic social jet lag. It's a permanent mismatch between our biological clocks, which are literally waiting for the sun to rise to wake us up, and our social clocks.
Right, the 8 a.m. start times.
Exactly. We force kids to be at their desks or adults at work at 8 a.m. That prolonged morning darkness poses severe safety risks to children and triggers long-term consequences for national health.
I hear that. But the political momentum behind PDST is undeniable right now. The Sunshine Protection Act has deep bipartisan roots. It passed the Senate unanimously in 2022.
Unanimously, yes.
And now it has near unanimous House committee support, along with the president's backing. When legislation so clearly reflects the will of the people who empirically prefer brighter afternoons to dark ones, shouldn't we listen?
We listened to that exact momentum in 1974, and it was a historical disaster.
Ah, the 1974 argument.
It's completely relevant. We enacted the Emergency Daylight Saving Time Energy Conservation Act, and public approval for PST plummeted from 79% down to 42% in a matter of months.
Wow, that fast?
Yes, because people liked the idea of bright evenings, but the reality of pitch black winter mornings was brutal. It led to tragic fatalities.
You're talking about Florida.
Right. 8 children killed in Florida while waiting for school buses in the dark. Congress literally had to reverse the experiment early because the human cost was just too high.
Okay, but relying on a 1974 policy failure to dictate 2026 time legislation is like, I don't know, refusing to use modern airbags because early seatbelts cause bruising?
That's a bit of a stretch.
Is it we are judging a 2026 problem using 1970s infrastructure? The human cost of those dark mornings was tragic, absolutely. But look at how modern society has evolved to mitigate those exact risks.
How so?
We have ubiquitous cell phones with flashlights. We have self-driving cars, advanced pedestrian detection systems, incredibly flexible remote work schedules. We aren't sending kids and commuters out into the exact same analog dark ages 50 years ago.
We may have changed our technology, but we haven't changed our biology. The circadian rhythm is essentially a complex chemical symphony.
Sure.
And it requires the conductor, which is the sun, to start playing. If the sun doesn't rise until 8:30 or 9 a.m. under permanent DST, the orchestra plays out of tune.
Okay.
Our bodies simply don't release the necessary morning cortisol to properly wake up and kickstart our metabolism. That hormonal disruption leads directly to insulin resistance.
Wait, really? Just from the morning light?
Yes. Under PST, much of the country is forced to function in a biological midnight, which worsens seasonal depression, increases diabetes risk, and completely tanks teenage academic performance.
Okay, I can see the biology. Waking up in the dark is metabolically taxing, and I don't dispute that the human body prefers standard time mornings. But we have to look at the other side of the ledger here.
Which is?
The spring clock change. If we eliminate that, we inherently remove the dangerous, documented spike in heart attacks and workplace injuries that predictably follow the lost hour of sleep every March.
That's true. The shift itself is dangerous.
Right. So by locking in PDST, we cure the biannual disruption while supercharging our economy. Because ultimately, we are a post-industrial evening-heavy society.
But you cannot trade millions of cases of severe metabolic and cardiovascular disease for a modest boost to restaurant and retail spending.
I wouldn't call it a modest boost, but go on.
The 2025 Stanford study explicitly predicted the impacts of these policies. They found that a permanent switch to standard time would reduce obesity by 2.6 million cases and stroke by 300,000 cases.
Those are huge numbers.
Exactly. When the conductor doesn't show up for that chemical symphony, the resulting insulin resistance manifests as real systemic cardiovascular disease. Standard time aligns with the sun. Daylight saving time fights it.
Right. But there is a crucial nuance in that exact Stanford study that often gets overlooked.
Oh.
Yeah. The study found that permanent daylight saving time also reduced obesity and stroke cases, just to a lesser extent than permanent standard time.
Well, yes, but
Because, as you noted, merely stopping the twice-a-year disruption fixes a lot of the harm. So if both permanent models improve upon our current system biologically, just by stopping the clock switching, shouldn't we choose the one that also delivers proven reductions in evening crime and economic stagnation?
But the overall improvement masks a disproportionate distribution of harm.
How so?
The slight difference in those health outcomes heavily penalizes vulnerable populations, workers with start times before 8 a.m., and people living on the western edges of time zones. They will experience the most extreme, prolonged morning darkness.
Okay, I see your point.
Replacing the acute heart attack risk of the spring shift with long-term systemic social jet lag is a public health failure. Standard time has to be the baseline because it honors our actual physiology.
Well, to summarize where I stand in light of our discussion, permanent daylight saving time marries public preference with modern economic and social realities. It cures the acute dangers of the biannual disruption while granting us safer, more productive, and honestly brighter evenings.
And my position remains that permanent standard time is the only medically responsible choice. It aligns our clocks with the sun and our biology, completely avoiding the proven dangerous pitfalls of dark winter mornings that disrupt our metabolic health.
What we absolutely converge, though, is that our current system of switching clocks twice a year is a dangerous, outdated relic.
Oh, 100%. It causes documented harm to public health and safety.
Completely agreed. So the real question moving forward is whether we prioritize biological alignment with the sun
or the structural demands of our modern social lifestyle.
Exactly.
And we will leave that ultimate conclusion up to you, the listener. As this legislation continues to move through Congress, the debate over our daily rhythms is far from over.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on the notification bell for future discussions. And the next time you look at the gears clicking away on your watch, ask yourself, are we mastering time or is time mastering us?